Hello again and welcome to Money Tips. Let me ask you a question. Do you ever feel that you have been ripped off or not treated very well by a bank? And if the answer is yes to that, listen to this. Noel Edmunds, the famous TV presenter, radio DJ rather, who has just won a substantial payout. I think they're talking about 5 million, but it's certainly a multi-million pound payout against RBS for what he calls destroying his business, a systematic sort of corrupt way that the bank acted in destroying his business and bringing his business down. Now, I'm going to go through this in a bit more detail on a future podcast, because I'm going to be interviewing a specialist who helps companies actually fight the banks, because the banks have been up to all sorts of tricks in the last few years, and one of them is the type of insurance they used to put on a mortgage or a loan, whereby if the rates went up or down in the wrong direction, then you could be penalised by tens of thousands of pounds. The other things they were doing were setting up divisions within the bank that were taking over businesses and disposing of businesses, and there was seen to be this conflict of interest, because on one hand you had the bank manager who has a business that isn't really in that much bad shape, but on the other hand you have this department leaning on them to close them down so that they could asset strip. Now, you wouldn't believe some of these stories. You think this can't be true. You know, this is all fantasy. I must be David Icke here, but no, these are facts. And companies and businesses, many businesses have lost their businesses through what I can only describe by the banks as despicable and often fraudulent behaviour. And this goes for several of the big banks. And it goes back a number of years. So in the next few days, I'll be interviewing that person, and we're going to go through that in more detail, and he'll be telling you the sort of things banks have been getting up to, what you can do to check if you've been overcharged, if you've been ripped off by the bank. And this particular person has helped a local authority get back, I think it was over 130 million. It was certainly in the multi-million pound settlement from a local authority against a bank. So this is not small fry stuff. This is big stuff. So do listen out for that. And if you have any questions, if you'd like me to submit any questions to them, any particular questions, then please, do drop me a line at charles@charleskelly.net. I'll be doing the interview next week, so get those questions coming in, and I'll ask the person direct. He's the leading expert in the country on this, and I'll be going through that next week. In the meantime, talking about banks, one more reminder again, sorry about this, but the PPI, the Payment Protection Insurance Compensation Scheme, comes to an end on the 31st of August. That's next month. So you only have a few more weeks now to get your claim in. Otherwise, you'd have to claim through the courts, which is a much more onerous process. PPI was sold by banks and credit card companies, to be fair, to protect you against sickness or accident or illness, and it would make the payments on your loan or credit card. The only thing is these were apparently missold, and it goes back a few years, and many people have been able to claim back tens of thousands of pounds in some cases, and the claims run into billions already. But Lloyds Bank today set aside a further £5 billion to pay out for claims or potential claims, and so they must realise that there are still more claims out there, and I'm sure there are more claims out there. So you'll be kicking yourself if you don't get this claim in. So get to that. Have a look. Just you can go to companies to help you. They'll do it sort of on no-win, no-fee basis, or you can Google how to do it. You can contact the banks directly, and even if you don't know your old policy numbers and that sort of thing, you just give your name and address. It can be a bit tricky, because I've been through this with someone. I was helping someone do this, and believe it or not, the companies come and say, "We haven't got any record of you. All the records are gone." Well, how does that come? They know you. If you owed them money, they would hound you. They'd be hounding you. They'd have that record, wouldn't they? But they apparently lose records, but then they find them again when they're put under a bit of pressure. So they can be a bit slippery. But just pursue it. If you get your claim in before the 31st of August, it doesn't matter if it takes months or years after that, but your claim has been registered. Now, I recently had an incident with the bank. I had an account with this bank for many, many years, and I went in to do a transfer to put down for a property. And the usual people I'd known had gone. They keep moving people around, don't they? And they said, right, well, we can do this transfer. Where does this money come from? I said, well, it's in your bank. It's there. It's in the bank. It's been in that account for many years. They said, where did that come from? I said, well, we had a business account here. So where did it come from? What business are you in? In the end, I got fed up with it. I said, look, why am I being asked all these questions? I didn't normally have to go through this to transfer a few £1,000s out of my money. And then they got stroppy. They called a manager out and said, well, unless you answer our questions, you comply with our policy, I will not be transferring this money. This is what the banks are like. I then pointed out politely that, I'm not the one who has been done for money laundering. It's your bank that's been done for money laundering. I won't mention who they are. And she said, no, they haven't. I said, well, actually you have. You were fined several £billions for money laundering by the American authorities. And I think then she backed off a little bit. But this is the way things are. They want you to comply. You have to do this and this and this. And yet they're the ones, in many cases, ripping people off and committing money laundering fraud. So eventually I got it sorted out. But, it is unbelievable. And I remember once when I was doing a law degree that the lecturer told me, he said, this is something very interesting. When you give the money to the bank, you think it's your money, but it's not. You're giving that money to the bank then to lend out, and they can lend that money out a number of times over. It's called fractional reserve lending, and they can lend out money virtually that they haven't got. So when you say, give me my money back, in actual fact, it's kind of their money. And they're always happy to take it, aren't they? When you come in with the money, provided it's not in a suitcase, but this money came in. I said, well, you've got it on record, this money's come in. You took the money. You took the money. You didn't question it at that point. You said, right, I'll have it. Now when you want to get it out, then it's, we've got to ask this question and that question. And where did you get it from? Are you a money launderer? All this sort of stuff. It was incredible. Anyway, needless to say, I'll be closing that account down very, very soon and moving on. But it is pretty much the same with many of the banks. They're all pretty much the same. So, wherever you go, there are challenger banks, of course, these new banks that seem a bit more flexible and helpful. But a friend of mine who has a company in Africa told me an interesting story that yesterday we know that the pound slipped to a very low rate against the dollar. I think it was 120, 121. And he said he then tried to exchange dollars. He tried to sell his dollars with his bank, with HSBC, and apparently in thousands of people were doing the same thing. Everyone was trying to sell their dollars because it had reached a very low point. The pound had reached a low point against the dollar, so that's the time to buy pounds and offload some dollars, which he held because he's in the import-export business. And what did the bank do? They crashed their site, so he couldn't move the money out of that account. And then the deadline had passed by 3:30, and then it came up again. So, was that a coincidence? Was too many people trying to use it? I don't know. But his view was that the bank had deliberately crashed the site. I don't know. I'm not saying. I'm just going on what he said. Anyway, that's all for now. This has been Charles Kelly, bringing you money tips to help you save, earn, invest, accumulate, and enjoy more money.